Have you ever noticed how the people who seem most magnetic are often the ones who aren't desperately trying to get your attention? But here's what's shocking about this phenomenon that most people completely miss. There are actually three psychological triggers happening simultaneously that make pulling back so devastatingly effective. The third one is so counterintuitive that when I explain it, you'll probably think I'm lying. But first, let me show you why everything you think you know about attraction is backwards. Think about it for a second. The friend who's always available at a moment's notice versus the one who has their own life, their own interests, their own boundaries. Which one do you find yourself respecting more? But there's something deeper happening here that goes beyond just respect. There's a neurological response occurring in your brain that you're probably not even aware of. And understanding this response is the key to everything I'm about to share with you. But before I reveal what's actually happening in people's brains when you pull back, I need you to understand the biggest mistake that destroys attraction instantly. Most people think pulling back means being cold, distant, or intentionally ignoring people. That approach will backfire spectacularly, and I'll explain exactly why in a moment. But there's something you need to know first about the scarcity principle that operates at a subconscious level. When you're constantly available, constantly accommodating, constantly trying to please everyone around them, you're actually triggering what psychologists call the availability heuristic. Your brain categorizes things that are always present as less valuable. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a specific point where pulling back crosses from attractive to repulsive, and knowing this boundary is crucial. I'll show you exactly where that line is. But first, you need to understand what's happening chemically in people's brains when you become less available. Let me paint you a picture that will change how you see every interaction for the rest of your life. You know that person who always says yes to everything? The one who drops their plans the moment someone asks them to hang out. Your brain has already categorized them, not consciously, but at a neurological level. They've been filed under always accessible, which your subconscious mind translates to low value. But there's something more sinister happening here that affects not just how others see that person, but how they see themselves. This creates what I call the accommodation trap, and once you're in it, getting out requires a very specific strategy that I'll share with you. But first, you need to understand why this trap is so deadly to your attractiveness. When you accommodate everyone, you're not just changing others' perception of you, you're rewiring your own brain to seek validation externally rather than generating it internally. And this rewiring has consequences that extend far beyond just dating or friendships. Now think about someone else, someone who has their own interests, their own commitments, their own boundaries. When this person makes time for you, how does it feel? It feels special, doesn't it? But there's a specific neurochemical reaction happening in your brain that makes this feeling so powerful. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get what you want, but when you anticipate getting something valuable that isn't guaranteed. This is the first psychological trigger, but it's useless without the second one. The second trigger is what separates people who accidentally stumble into being attractive from those who can consciously create attraction. It's called investment theory, and here's how it works in real relationships. When someone has to work to spend time with you, when they have to plan around your schedule, when they have to earn your attention, their brain assigns higher value to the interaction. But there's a dark side to this principle that most people don't talk about. You can manipulate this trigger in ways that are ethically questionable, and I've seen people destroy relationships by taking it too far. So before I show you how to apply this correctly, you need to understand the ethical boundaries, because what I'm about to share with you is powerful enough to completely change your social dynamics. But with that power comes responsibility. Here's what pulling back actually looks like in practice, and why most people get this completely wrong. It doesn't mean having interests that don't revolve around other people. That's just the surface level. The deeper principle is about creating what I call selective availability. You're not unavailable to everyone. You're strategically available to the right people at the right times. But here's the crucial part that determines whether this works or backfires. The timing of when you pull back is everything. Pull back too early and you seem disinterested. Pull back too late and you seem like you're playing games. There's a sweet spot that maximizes the psychological impact, and I'll tell you exactly when that is. But first, you need to understand what's happening in your own psychology when you start implementing this strategy. When you first start pulling back, your brain will fight you. You'll feel anxious, worried that people will forget about you, replace you, or stop caring about you altogether. This anxiety is actually a withdrawal symptom from validation addiction. Most people give up right here because the discomfort feels too intense. But if you can push through this phase, something remarkable happens on the other side. Your brain starts producing what I call internal validation. Instead of needing others to make you feel worthy, you begin generating that feeling from within. This internal shift creates a magnetic quality that people can sense even if they can't articulate what's different about you. But there's a specific timeline for this transformation, and understanding it will help you stay committed when the process gets uncomfortable. The first week is the hardest. Your nervous system is adjusting to not getting its regular hits of external validation. Week 2, you'll notice people responding differently to you, but you might interpret it negatively at first. Week 3 is when the magic starts happening. People begin reaching out more, making more effort to spend time with you, treating your time as more valuable. But here's what nobody tells you about week 4. Week 4 is when you discover who was actually interested in you versus who was just using you for convenience. Some relationships will fade, and this can be painful. But the relationships that deepen during this phase become the foundation of genuine attraction and respect. However, there's a critical mistake people make during week 4 that can undo all their progress. They get excited by the results and overcorrect. They go from being too available to being completely unavailable. This destroys the delicate balance they've created. The key is maintaining what I call calibrated scarcity. You want to be scarce enough to be valued, but available enough to maintain connection. And there's a specific formula for this that I use. For every 3 times someone reaches out to you, respond enthusiastically to 2 of them and be genuinely busy for 1. This creates an intermittent reinforcement schedule that psychologists have proven is the most addictive pattern for human behavior. But there's an advanced version of this strategy that multiplies its effectiveness by 10. The advanced version involves something I call value stacking. When you do make yourself available, you make sure the experience is so valuable, so engaging, so memorable that it justifies the wait. This isn't about being entertaining or impressive. It's about being genuinely present and invested when you choose to show up. But implementing this requires understanding the third psychological trigger, which is the most powerful one. The third trigger is what I call incomplete satisfaction. This is where most people's understanding of pulling back completely falls apart. They think the goal is to be mysterious or hard to get. But the real power comes from being incredibly satisfying to be around, while simultaneously creating anticipation for the next interaction. You want people to leave every interaction with you feeling fulfilled, but also curious about what they'll discover next time. Here's how this works in practice. Every conversation, every hangout, every interaction should answer 1 question while raising 2 new ones. If someone asks about your weekend, don't just say it was good. Share something interesting that happened, but mention it in a way that makes them curious about other aspects of your life they haven't discovered yet. But here's the psychological principle that makes this so effective. The human brain is wired to seek completion. When you give someone partial satisfaction, their mind becomes preoccupied with filling in the gaps. They start thinking about you more, wondering about the parts of your life they don't know about, looking forward to discovering more about who you really are. This creates what psychologists call the Zeigarnik Effect. People remember incomplete or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. By never giving someone complete access to your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, you become more memorable, more intriguing, more attractive. Now here's your challenge, and this part is crucial for making everything I've shared actually work in your life. Choose one relationship where you've been too available, too accommodating, too eager to please. Starting tomorrow, implement the 3-to-2 response ratio I mentioned. But more importantly, start developing what I call internal interests. These are activities, hobbies, goals, or projects that energize you independently of other people's approval. When your happiness doesn't depend on others' validation, when you have sources of satisfaction that are entirely your own, you naturally become less available and more attractive. But there's a specific type of internal interest that creates the strongest magnetic effect. The most attractive internal interests are ones that involve growth, creation, or contribution. Learning a new skill, building something, helping others achieve their goals. These activities don't just make you less available, they make you more interesting when you are available. People can sense when someone is actively becoming a better version of themselves. So here's what real attraction looks like. It's not about being perfect or being everything to everyone. It's about being genuinely engaged in your own life while selectively sharing that energy with others. When you pull back, you give others the space to miss you, to appreciate you, to choose you actively rather than just accepting your constant presence. And that choice, that active appreciation, that anticipation for your next interaction, that's what genuine magnetic attraction really is.